Welcome back, true believers and all you merry Marvelites, to another very interesting episode of Marvel's Avengers 101. So to take you all on a trip down memory lane, we knew ever since the first reveal trailer of the Avengers project back in 2017 that Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics was planning to make this game a title which gamers can play in for years to come, which was then further elaborated upon back during E3 2019, where they did confirm during that huge presentation of the game's reveal that every new hero and region will be added at no additional cost. This is all of course possible in the first place due to the game's live service nature. So even though Crystal and Square do seem to have a post-launch roadmap planned for Marvel's Avengers, we still don't know the exact time interval between each new content drop, as well as how that will fare in terms of consumer reception. And while we don't have precise answers to those questions just yet, we do have more information coming from the recent Game Informer article, which does put things into a better perspective. And alongside of that, which is the main aspect that we are going to look into first, is that we did receive a bit of an insight from the developers themselves as to exactly how they have received fan feedback for Marvel's Avengers in general. But first, huge props to Brian Shea, who is a digital editor at Game Informer, for being the one to culminate all this information together about the game in the first place. Brian has certainly done a fantastic job of further analyzing all the intricacies that will be featured within the Avengers project once the full game does release. And simply seeing the massive amounts of information that were provided with his article alone, it at least provides me a little bit more hope as to what the final product of Marvel's Avengers could be. Although, given the game's live service nature, I do think that it's fair to assume that the full package that Marvel's Avengers will entail won't actually be fully complete until a few months after the main release on September 4th. And seeing how the same thing was true in regards to Spider-Man PS4 and that game's complete DLC package, I just hope that the added content that Crystal is planning to implement within this game will surely be worth the wait. But as for the Game Informer article itself, we do get to hear a bit of developer commentary from the main creative director of Marvel's Avengers with that of Sean Eskai. And as it goes on to say, while Marvel's Avengers is much larger in scope than the A-Day footage Crystal Dynamics debuted with, feedback on that small slice was intense and plentiful, which helped the team decide on the 4-month delay. We wanted to respond to fan feedback. We wanted to get the opportunity to polish and create a world worth playing in for years to come, but also give the opportunity to hear what the fans wanted. See how we could improve in areas that we have already invested in the storyline and timeline, and also perceive what the future of this game could be, how big it can be, how powerful it can be, and how moving it can be. And based on that statement from Sean alone, I definitely appreciate his decision more to delay the game in order to make the final product as best as it can be, especially considering the massive scale and amounts of promises that Square have made ever since the reveal trailer in 2017. There are a lot of expectations for Marvel's Avengers coming from a plethora of Marvel Games fans. And while I still think that the footage that we did see during the War Table livestream does need quite a bit of polish, I do completely understand that they are trying their absolute hardest to make the best game that they possibly can. And knowing that all the developers are currently working on this game from at-home situations as well as during a global pandemic, I definitely think that saying their dedication to make this game as good as it can be is surely that of an understatement. So again, even though you will hear me being critical about certain aspects of Marvel's Avengers, it's simply because I want this game to be the best possible product that it can be. And speaking of which, the article continues with Brian Shea's thoughts as to how he felt after playing the A-Day demo back in 2019 compared to the footage that we have seen now, with of course a little bit of commentary from Sean Eskai. So as he goes on to elaborate, when I played the opening sequence last year, I loved how Black Widow, Hulk, and Captain America felt, but playing as the powerful Thor or the tech-loaded Iron Man just didn't give me the sense of power I wanted to feel as I blasted through waves of enemies. When I ask Eskai what exactly the team addressed with the added time, he specifically references those two heroes as if on cue. We wanted the characters to look, feel, and especially play certain ways so that you weren't just passively watching or feeling like you were bombarded by cutscenes, but you would feel that power on the stick. You would experience Thor's hammer, experience Iron Man's blast, and feel mighty, as opposed to simply looking at mighty stuff. And seeing how we're drawing even closer to launch, with the delay behind them, and the release date a few short months away, the team at Crystal Dynamics doubled down on its commitment to releasing a game worthy of wielding Thor's Mjolnir or Iron Man's suit. The result, as shown in the War Table presentation, is a game that appears to have learned from its early missteps, and has transformed into a game to once again be excited for. Now, while I thoroughly appreciate Brian's optimism, as well as Sean's dedication to answering fan feedback and polishing the game as much as possible, I still feel a bit hesitant based on the footage that we did see during the War Table presentation. And no, it's not just me feeling this way. Now, if you did manage to look on Twitter after the War Table livestream concluded on June 24th, there was a very interesting Twitter post coming from that of Imran Khan, who, if you don't know, is the ex-senior editor at Game Informer who is now currently co-hosting at Kinda Funny Games. So even though I'm quite sure there are a lot of people excited for this game to release and all the gameplay that was showcased for it, Imran's claim actually went ahead and said the opposite. And as he posted on Twitter, I've said this before, but Avengers playtesters I've spoken to have frequently mentioned to me the game just feels incredibly boring to play. Nothing I've seen seems like they've fixed that. So on the one hand, we do have a current Game Informer editor who is pretty excited to see what Marvel's Avengers will entail. But on the other hand, we do have a former Game Informer editor, as well as a plethora of playtesters saying that Marvel's Avengers didn't really live up to the hype. So even though you are completely free to interpret both of those statements however you will, I am still personally staying on the cautiously optimistic side to see how the game will fare once it does release. However, I do believe the game's online beta is going to be the most important marketing element that this game will entail. That way, instead of coming from game journalists or editors, we're going to see exactly how the general public will take the game's reception before its initial release. And I can almost 100% guarantee you that everyone at Crystal and Square is going to be keeping their ears close to the ground to hear direct fan feedback about the game's beta once that does release. But after the game's online beta does come out, we will then be slowly going closer and closer to the game's main launch on September 4th. And I can assure you that after most people end up finishing the game's main campaign, they will then want to know exactly what will come next down the Marvel's Avengers roadmap. Not to worry though, because alongside Square confirming that we will receive more updates on the next hero that will be added into the game's roster within the next War Table live stream, we do also get some slight insights from the developers themselves as to what we can expect down the line after we beat the game. And coming directly from the Game Informer article, at launch, Marvel's Avengers hopes to deliver an all-in-one superhero experience in line with the rich pedigree of Crystal Dynamics, but much like the comics and movies, the universe is always expanding. And like we know already, while you can purchase items from the in-game store, heroes, villains, and regions are planned to be added at no additional cost. If we look at the main campaign, that's kind of Kamala in that perspective as the point of view character, reassembling your heroes, getting through the campaign, understanding AIM and MODOK, and that story, that's just getting your team together, studio head Scott Amos says. Then, as we start adding more heroes and more regions, we actually will add more stories, like full stories that actually have a front and an end, and like, hey, we're introducing a new hero, and here's an actual story arc through that particular region they may be a part of. That also includes new villains. We'll actually get new villains, named villains, will start showing up. This world continually expands. It starts with AIM, and it's very much about understanding AIM and the situation with them. That will start evolving further and further as we get more content released month to month and even months past that. So based on Scott's statement alone, even though we don't have official confirmation yet from Square Enix or Marvel as to when we can expect these content drops to come out with their scheduling, it does seem like Scott is implying that all these new heroes and regions will be added at a monthly basis. So for example, we could possibly have Hawkeye and his tailored region to release in the month of October, followed by that of Black Panther and Wakanda to be added in November. And yes, having to not pay a single cent for any heroes or regions added within the game is a huge plus on Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix part. But if it turns out that particular hero and the region that's added within the game are mediocre at best, then it won't really hold up all that well to convince gamers to continuously play Marvel's Avengers on a regular basis. And seeing how their main mission is to try and deliver a game which gamers can immerse themselves in for years to come, they truly need to deliver on that promise from the second the game releases. Because if the game isn't fun at launch, then it's not going to last for very long. And to put that mindset into a better perspective, much like in the Marvel Cinematic cinematic universe, Crystal Dynamics is dropping subtle hints throughout the launch content to give players fuel to theorize about what's next. Some of the hooks we cast into the water on day 1, you're like, oh, that's kinda cool. AIM has this undersea base. It's doing some cool technology. I wonder if that ever goes somewhere. Then later, we pay that off with, oh my gosh, that tied to this, and now this other character showed up. Those types of arcs are things we're starting at the core level, and then adding these heroes, regions, and villains at no additional cost. Crystal Dynamics hopes to regularly support Marvel's Avengers with post-launch content for years to come. But first, as I stated previously, it needs to drive home a strong launch to establish a fan base that would necessitate such a long-term roadmap. Following the success of another modern Marvel superhero game, Insomniac's Spider-Man in 2018, Marvel's Avengers has a lot to live up to. However, with the improvements shown in the recent footage, as well as the understanding the studio demonstrates about what it needed to improve upon from its initial reveal, the Avengers are once again looking mighty. And with all that knowledge put into consideration, that's the video I have for you today, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think about Crystal's response to fan feedback, and are you excited for the roadmap that they have planned down the line? I really need this game's launch to convince me that the further content that we will receive down the line will be truly worthwhile. Because if they manage to create a truly fun and engaging game at launch, then I think that the future content they will release down the line is definitely going to be an interesting experience. And until that time comes, I'll just keep my fingers crossed for the best possible outcome. And until the next news update, everyone, thank you all so much for watching, stay merry Marvelites, and peace out.
In the coming months, we'll talk about our first post-launch hero, our upcoming beta, and of course, our launch.
No pressure, right?